What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee Darko. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so that you're always up to date on the new uploads as well as alerts on this show. The other thing that you can do to help build this community is make sure you leave a comment below. Let us know what you like, what you don't like about the show, and ultimately, let us know who's winning these arguments, because I need to know that I'm beating Renee in these debates. Run the tape.
We were on the topic of retirement and insurance and locums, and we did have a comment a while back.
Okay.
And she was talking about how she does feel that there can be a conflict of interest from a hospital between a doctor and the hospital. Love Anani.
He was on the show previously with his wife.
Yes. He sent in the question where he said, I do think that there can be a conflict of interest from a hospital and a doctor. I don't think locums prevents that, though. In my department, protocols apply whether you are a part of the group or locums. Only difference is the hospital can fire the doctor directly versus firing the locum group or twisting their arm to get rid of the doc. So this was an older episode, and we'll link it in the show notes as well.
All right, bye, Dr. Renee. We'll see you later. Yeah. So that's a very interesting, precise type of situation. I'm glad Dr. Love brought that up. Without boring everybody, like, there's multiple ways that you can be working for a hospital. And, depending on what specialty you are in, usually that dictates things. So for example, like ER doctors, normally what they do is they form a group. Like, they come together as a group, like 4 or 5, maybe 10, possibly 15. And then they form a company, right? So you'll have a company of ER docs. And then they have like a structure within them, like who's going to be negotiating contracts, who's going to be doing billing, all these different things. But they as a group will then go to a hospital or a bunch of hospitals and in essence, like, sell their service as a group to a hospital or several hospitals, right? And then not only that, right, like, they in essence kind of run the hospital's ER department from within. So it's almost like there becomes like the ER docs that are part of the group, they are basically like employees of the group. But then the question is, are they also employees of the hospital? It could get real intricate and so forth, but there are some conflict of interest things that you may have to read up on, guys. But that's it's a very unique issue that I think is mainly for things like ER docs and so forth. But those are for ER docs who are in a group that is negotiating with that same hospital that you're at. But if you as a locums ER doc is trying to go to any other regular hospital by yourself, you don't have to worry about that. So, because there is no conflict of interest. So, but that is a good point, Dr. Love. Because I think Dr. Love, he's like I believe he's a medical director through a company that he works with that contracts their services to a hospital, I believe. So he may want to write in if he hears this and go from there.
Okay. And then I'm not really sure how to transition into it, but there was this topic on WorldStar about a doctor stating that doctors get paid more if they make the client sick.
I saw that. Man, that's a tough one, right? So basically what he's saying is, I read the video, and it's an old school doc. He's saying that, depending on what the diagnosis of the patient is, that's going to determine what the reimbursement rate is going to be, right? So he's given the example of, if you as a doctor see that a patient has a certain lab value that we all think is consistent with diabetes, we will give a diagnosis of diabetes, and hence we will get paid a certain amount from the insurance company. That is true, right? But that's how we base our ability to diagnose. These are guidelines. And yes, some of that stuff has to do with how insurance companies pay and so forth. The thing that
First of all, I want to talk about how not controversial, but concerning, I guess what I'm looking for. How concerning it is for him to be on social media and saying that out loud. Like, could you imagine as a patient, you're scrolling, and this is what you come across, and he is your doctor, and you're like, well, damn.
Yeah.
When he told me that I had X, Y, and Z, is that even, like, did I really have that? Like, now you need like second and third opinions.
Yeah. And look, the way how I always describe it is like, yo, imagine going to your mechanic and the mechanic says like, yo, you come in to get your car evaluated just for like an oil change, right? You know what I'm saying? You go and then they say, well, you know, your CV joint times 2 needs to be replaced. Like, what are you going to say? No. The most thing you will be able to say is, I can't afford to get it fixed. But how do you
What's funny is
know it
that
needs to be
actually happens a lot.
right? How do you know it needs to be fixed? Right? Because you don't speak the lingo.
Does it happen to men? I know it happens to it. Like every time I go get my car, I got to get an air filter and I've got to get this and I've got to get that. But like, I wonder if it ever happens to men. Like when men go in for an oil change, do you guys actually just leave with an oil change?
I think most men leave with an oil change because it's not that we know more. I think we're just always more skeptical. And we're like, man, get the hell out of here. I ain't paying for all that. Right? Whereas they know how to craft, you know, in general, they craft the story that they know will tug at women's emotions, which is, yeah, like you're, let's say like you're driving and you lose control of X, Y, and Z. You don't want that to happen to you, do you? Or let's say you're picking up your kids and X, Y, and Z happens. And guys don't care about their kids, right? They're like, look, man, I'll be all right. Like we be skidding the whole way and stuff and we'll figure it out. Right? All I'm saying is that they know there's certain psychology that they use differently to manipulate men versus women, but in essence, the same thing. And if you have a dude who don't know the lingo of what the mechanic is saying, he's gonna say something to make you pay for it the same way, maybe a little bit differently that he'll say to you as a woman. You know what I'm saying? But it's the same outcome. But basically what I'm saying is the public doesn't know, like they don't understand. Like if they understood like how we diagnose and some of the things that we do, I think they'd be very shocked to find out about certain things. Like it's like you go to a restaurant, do you really want to know how your food is being made? But ultimately, I think if they knew how things were being made, they'd be like, oh, I get it. Right? Like there's nothing really from a doctor standpoint. There's really nothing, you know, on the, what's the best way I want to describe it? There's nothing, I can't see people being upset about the way that they're treated from the doctor standpoint. I think they'd be like, yo, I didn't know you had to deal with all this garbage as an insurance companies, you know? And I think,
But I think the topic that he was trying to aim for was that between the doctor and the insurance and, you know, either the hospital or the clinic, between the three of them or whatever, they essentially break their oath constantly, depending on what the illness may be. The severity of it, I guess.
some of that stuff I think was sensationalized. I think when I watched the video, I watched it and I was like, I think he's sensationalizing certain things. Like for example, if somebody comes into my hospital, right, and let's say they get into a motorcycle crash and they break their arm, they get a head injury and they break ribs. Like and then let's say they're also diabetic, right? If I'm treating all of those different things, I'm going to list all of those different things that I'm treating. And that's going to increase the level of reimbursement that I get, right? So yes, I am getting reimbursed more, but that's because I'm treating more stuff, right? And the question though is, do I have sinister intentions by doing that, right? Do I have sinister intentions by doing it? And I think most people listening would be like, no, like if you're taking care of somebody who has all of these issues going on, there should be a potential that you should get reimbursed for taking care of all of these different things.
Well, what about on a smaller scale, though? On a smaller scale, you're a trauma surgeon, so everything you do and it's on a larger scale. So let's take it back a little bit. Let's think. So I see an allergist, right? I see an allergist regularly for the multitude of allergies I've developed as an adult. And I find it redundant for me to go in just for him to check on me. Hey, how's your breathing? How are you doing? I think that's redundant.
Yeah.
I always get charged a lot more for that. So I cancel those appointments. He's like, oh, I want to see you in 6 months. I just don't schedule them. But then it comes to a point where he will stop me from getting my shots until I see him.
Yes. So part of that is due diligence. We need to see how you're doing, how you're reacting to the medications, right? That happened to my mom once, right? Like my mom was getting her high blood pressure medications, and then all of a sudden she called me and she was completely pissed off. She was like, "Yeah, they won't let me get any more of my high blood pressure medications." I called the doctor, and the doctor says, "Yeah, we've been trying to schedule follow-ups with your mother for over a year." So I don't know how she's doing. I can't check her blood pressure when she comes in. How do I know that the medications is even working? So there's that component also, right? Which is, I just need to make sure you, Kiara, are responding very well to the medications that I am doing, right? It may sound redundant, but yeah, part of that is just doing the due diligence of making sure that you're doing well and that you have a good reaction with the medications, right? Now,
Okay.
the question that you are having, like, are all the questions necessary? Are all the questions that they're asking you actually necessary, correct?
Yes.
Right. So that's part of the general intake that they do in order to make sure that they can bill the correct way for you. So yes, there's that component also, right? Part of you coming
Okay.
in to see them is, how's your breathing doing? How's your heart doing? Any complaints, any fevers, any chills? All of those different questions they document so that when
Look,
you go,
I'm very much on the,
yeah.
if there's something wrong with me, I will let you know. I will come to you and let you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I see your point. I see your point.
Right. Because what if like you like every time you take the medication you get like a bad reaction? It's just that like you're not telling me, right? There's that component. And I think like I can't cape for every doc that's out there. Like there are docs who like skirt the business, right? There are docs who figure out how to make this work in their on you know in favor of them. I don't know what everybody does and stuff, but I'm sure that there's some people who do manipulation, right? That's the reason why some doctors get sued by the government or by Medicare and so forth. That occurs. I would say the majority of them don't do that. Majority don't.
Okay. Well, I
That's a
mean,
good, but that
that's
was when I
comforting.
saw that. When I saw that, I was very interested. But then the other thing too is like the majority of docs now are employed, right? Like so, like we don't get paid like that anymore, right? Like what he's talking about is like people who do private practice, which for the most part, if you're listening to this right now, if like the minority of doctors right now in the United States are in private practice, right? Which means that when you're working for a hospital, you know who does the billing? The hospital, right? Like they do it based off of what you write down and what you document. And then that money doesn't come directly to you as a doc. That money goes to the hospital. And then the hospital takes whatever they get and they divvy it to the doctor, right? So it's a little bit, or actually it's very different now. The incentives to do all those different things that he's talking about, I think for the most part are gone, right? Because now you've just entered somebody else, a big middleman or middle woman into the picture.
I get it.
Yeah.
Um,
You really got to be doing it for the
he
love.
does. He
You really got to be in medicine for the love of medicine. That's what, the base. That's what I'm saying.
he did. He does seem a little older, so maybe his viewpoints are a little antiquated.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.